Hi, I'm Dave, and this is Street Level America. You know what this is? It's a cowboy hat, an iconic symbol of the American West. But to a lot of people who wear it, who have grown up with that mystique, that image of the Old West, that character, that cowboy virtue, treat your neighbors well, work hard, build something out of nothing. It means something. It's part of who we are as Americans. It is the Old West. Ask somebody who comes from overseas to America. They love the Old West. There's something exciting about it. And in America, there's something pioneering about it. Pioneers, Oregon Trail, cowboys, hard work, build America from the ground up. It identifies a person. It's time to turn this also into a symbol of expression of the identity of a person. The First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution says this: Congress shall make no law respecting or establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. First Amendment U.S. Constitution. So the U.S. government should not interfere with the right of a people to express themselves, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else, right? The state of Oregon does not allow Rick Steber to wear a cowboy hat on the voter's pamphlet. It's time for the cowboy hat standoff. Now, I'm not a constitutional attorney or lawyer, don't claim to be. But as I read this and talk about the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, the right of Americans to wear what they want, to express their identity, and somebody's running for office and they want to share with the voters who they are. Rick Steber has written 50 books about the American Old West. It is core to who he is. It is core as an identity of an individual, his ethos, his character, his virtues, his values. It defines who he is as a person. But the state of Oregon says that no hats are to be allowed in the voters' pamphlet. And so Rick Steber, when they were having this conversation with the Secretary of State's office, Rick said, well, what if I wear a turban? And the person he talked to on the phone said, well, I guess it would be allowed as a religious expression, not defined as a hat. So, are we saying that a turban would be allowed, not a cowboy hat? And we called the Secretary of State's office. So far, nobody has wanted to wear a turban in the voters' pamphlet. But to us, that's kind of a moot point. The real point is Rick Steber wants to wear a cowboy hat in the voters' pamphlet. It is his identity, his core virtues, his core character. The guy's a Western author, written 50 books talking about the American Old West. That's who he is. It is his identity, his expression. Freedom of expression, right? So in Oregon, I think it's time for a cowboy hat challenge, a cowboy hat standoff. We invite you to go into the Secretary of State's office and wear a cowboy hat and say, you know what? It expresses who I am. I believe in traditional American values. I believe in American values. I believe in America. I believe in the Old West. I believe in hard work. That's what made Oregon the state it is. That's what made America the state it is. We're celebrating 250 years, hopefully 250 more. And this First Amendment says that I have a right to express myself. I have the freedom of expression. So in Oregon, does that not include wearing a cowboy's hat and the voter's pamphlet? Again, I'm not a constitutional attorney, but doesn't that interfere with a person's right of expression? Now, Rick hasn't talked about suing the state or raising any kind of constitutional challenge. That's our idea. Why are we doing this? Why in Tennessee? Why a news organization in Tennessee is excited about taking a stand on a candidate in Oregon wearing a cowboy hat? It's because we see so many things in America that are core to our identity, core to our value system, being attacked, being voted out of office, being trampled upon. People are told to sit down, shut up. You're not being inclusive enough. No, this is who we are as Americans. Statue of Liberty, the cowboy hat. It's who we are. And who we are at our core, we should be able to express ourselves, right? So as you think about voting for me as a county commissioner in Crook County, Oregon, I want you to know who I am at the core, who I am as a person. It identifies my ethos, my values, my character, my virtue. And this hat just kind of represents that. So if you're not allowing me to wear that, isn't that somewhat in violation of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution? Is Oregon violating Rick Steber's First Amendment constitutional rights? Just a question we're asking for a friend, right? Now, Rick Steber isn't saying he's going to issue a constitutional challenge. It's just us saying, you know, there's so many things that are changing in America, so many things that we're having to give up. First, you ask us to give up the cowboy hat, okay? What's next? What are you going to ask us to give up next? You're going to take away the flag? You're going to take away the Constitution? Take away my Bible? What's next? Now, I know the state of Oregon isn't saying he has to give up his cowboy hat, but as he expresses himself to the voters of Crook County as who he is as a core individual, character, ethos, values, that identifies who he is, that is core. Maybe not be his religion. If you ask Rick, it kind of is, but that's core to who he is his identity. He should be allowed to express that in the voters' pamphlet. Now, the ORS, Oregon Revised Statute, passed by the Oregon State Legislature to prohibit uniforms, judges, judicial robes, or any hats to be viewed by a candidate on a candidate, because I assume they don't want to sway the opinion of those looking at the candidates and deciding who to vote for. But let's take that a little step further. So should the electors, the voters, be swayed by the character, be swayed by ethos, virtue, the identity of the person, the candidate? The cowboy hat identifies that as Rick Steber's persona, as his character. And you're not allowing that to be shown? Aren't you violating Rick Steber's rights? Now, I'm not a judge, I'm not a constitutional attorney, but as I read that Constitution that I just threw on the ground, because you want to take that next? That's what it says. Congress shall pass no law prohibiting my expression, freedom of speech, essentially. Time to pick up the cowboy hat, time to pick up the U.S. Constitution and say, excuse me, it's who I am. It's who I am as an Oregonian. It's my character, it's my identity, it's who I am. If you're not allowing me to show that in the voters pamphlet, are you not prohibiting me from showing people the core, my character, my virtues, my value system? I think that's stepping on his constitutional rights of his freedom of expression to convey to the voters who he is. I think we have a constitutional question in Oregon. That's just my opinion. I'm Street Level America. I'm Dave Adams. That's what I think.